Clara Jennings pressed her gloved hands tightly around the worn handle of her carpet bag as the stagecoach jolted along the dusty Montana trail. Every bump rattled her bones, but she dared not complain. She had left behind a life of uncertainty, and now each mile carried her closer to what she prayed was God's answer to her hopes. The agency letter was folded neatly inside her reticule. She had read it so many times that the words were memorized, the kind, though somewhat formal lines from a widowed rancher who sought not only a wife, but also a mother for his young daughter. Clara, 22 and with no prospects back east, had been drawn by the gentle way he described his longing for companionship and stability. She had answered with honesty. She could not promise to be perfect, but she could promise loyalty, hard work, and faith. The agreement had been struck. Now, after weeks of travel, she was almost there. The stage finally rolled to a halt in front of a wide expanse of land. Fences stretched into the distance, and cattle dotted the hills beyond. A tall, weather-beaten man stood by the hitching post, his stance strong, arms crossed. He had a rifle slung casually over one shoulder and eyes so piercing they made Clara's breath catch. Surely this was the man from the letter. Her heart pounded with a mixture of relief and nerves. She smoothed her dress, stepped down from the coach with as much grace as her shaking knees allowed, and lifted her chin. "Mr. Daniels?" she asked softly, offering a hopeful smile. The man's brows drew together. His voice was deep, cautious. "Name's Daniel Reed. Don't know who you're looking for, but it ain't me." Clara blinked, startled. "But this is the Double R Ranch, isn't it?" "Sure is." His tone carried no welcome, only wariness. "And I didn't send for a bride." The words hit her like a stone to the chest. She fumbled with her reticule, pulling out the folded letter. "But I was told." "Your ranch. A widower needing a wife to help raise his daughter." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I lost my wife 3 years ago. That much is true. And I got a daughter who means the world to me. But I never asked some agency to send me a wife." Clara's cheeks flamed with humiliation. Heat rose in her eyes, but she refused to let tears fall, not in front of this man who looked at her as though she were a trespasser. She glanced back at the departing coach. The driver had already cracked his whip, the horses pulling the carriage away, leaving her in a cloud of dust with nowhere to go. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, scratching the back of his neck. Clearly, he was a man who valued order and control, and Clara's sudden appearance disrupted both. "Look," he said gruffly, "I don't know what mistake was made, but you can't stay here. Best find a room in town until you sort it out." Her lips parted in protest, but before she could respond, the door of the ranch house creaked open. A little girl, no more than 7, came running down the steps. Golden curls bounced around her shoulders, and her blue eyes lit with curiosity when they landed on Clara. "Papa, who's this?" the child asked. Daniel's stern expression softened as he knelt beside the girl. "Just a lady who came by mistake, Lily. She won't be staying." But Lily ignored him. She walked right up to Clara, studied her with a seriousness far beyond her years, and slipped her small hand into Clara's gloved one. Then, leaning close, she whispered words that nearly undid Clara's composure. "God finally sent you to us." Clara's breath caught. The child's innocent faith pierced through her uncertainty, stirring something in her heart. She looked at Daniel, who now appeared shaken, his jaw working as though he struggled with words he couldn't bring himself to speak. For the first time since she had stepped off the stagecoach, Clara felt steady. Perhaps the letter had carried her to the wrong ranch, but as Lily's hand clung tightly to hers, Clara couldn't shake the sense that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Daniel Reed was a man who prided himself on control. On his ranch, every fence post was measured, every herd tally exact, every dollar stretched until it squealed. Chaos had no place here. He had buried enough of it when he laid his wife in the ground. So when a strange woman appeared on his land, with a bag in her hand and a hopeful look in her eyes, Daniel's instinct was to shut the door before she even stepped through it. But there she stood, this Clara Jennings. Slim and pale from travel, though her chin lifted with surprising strength. Her dress was plain but neat, her gloved hand still wrapped around Lily's small fingers as though she belonged there. That was the problem. Lily already looked at her as though she did. Daniel cleared his throat, hardening his voice. "Miss Jennings, was it? I'm sorry for your trouble, but I didn't send for you. My ranch don't need another pair of hands. And my daughter don't need false hope." At that, Clara's eyes flicked toward him, wide and wounded. But she said nothing, only tightened her grip on Lily's hand. Daniel cursed himself silently. He hadn't meant to sound cruel, only firm. "Papa." Lily's voice was small but determined. "She ain't false hope, she's real. And you said, God listens when we pray." Daniel felt the words like an arrow to the chest. He stared at his daughter, whose faith was so much bigger than her small frame, then turned his gaze away quickly. "That'll do, Lily. Head inside." But Lily didn't budge. She pressed closer to Clara's skirts, as if afraid her father might chase the woman off like a stray dog. Clara knelt, bringing herself eye level with the child, her voice gentle but steady. "Your papa's right, Lily. I wasn't meant to come here. There must have been some mistake in the letters." The little girl's eyes filled with tears, and Daniel's resolve wavered. He hated nothing more than seeing Lily cry. He almost wished he could let the stranger stay a night just long enough for his daughter to feel less lonely. But no. That road led to disaster. Clara rose, dusting her skirt, dignity intact despite her weariness. "Mr. Reed, all trouble. You know further. If you could point me toward town, I'll find a place until I can arrange the rest of my journey." Daniel looked past her to the long road stretching toward the nearest settlement, 15 miles of rough terrain with no guarantee of shelter until she reached it. The sun was already dipping behind the hills. Sending her alone was unthinkable. And yet inviting her to stay under his roof? That felt more dangerous than wolves at the door. "You can't walk it," he muttered, almost to himself. Clara hesitated, then squared her shoulders. "I've walked farther before." "Not out here, you haven't." He let out a heavy breath. "Fine. You can take the bunkhouse for the night. My men are in the north pasture, so it's empty. Tomorrow I'll see you to town." Clara's eyes softened with gratitude. She nodded once, with the quiet composure of a woman who had learned not to expect kindness, yet cherished it when it came. "Thank you, Mr. Reed," Lily beamed, clapping her hands. "See, Papa? God made a way." Daniel shot his daughter a sharp look, but her joy was uncontainable. She tugged Clara's hand toward the house, eager to show her the swing under the cottonwood tree, the calf she'd named Daisy, the patch of wildflowers by the fence. Clara followed with a gentle smile, her exhaustion hidden under patience. Daniel watched them go, his chest tightening with unease. Already Lily was attaching herself, and already he felt the walls he had built around his heart shift. If only a fraction. This was exactly why he needed the woman gone by morning. And yet, as the sky burned gold with sunset and Clara's laughter floated back on the breeze soft, like music long forgotten, Daniel Reed couldn't shake the feeling that sending her away might not be as simple as he told himself. The bunkhouse smelled of dust, old wood, and faint traces of leather oil. Clara smoothed the thin blanket over the narrow cot, trying not to notice how the boards in the corner leaned, or how the window rattled when the evening breeze swept through. She had slept in worse, she reminded herself. At least here she had a roof overhead and 4 walls to keep out the night, but her hands trembled as she folded her shawl. The sting of humiliation still pressed hard against her chest. Foolish, she scolded herself. Foolish to believe letters on paper could promise a future. Foolish to think a stranger's words meant God's plan was so neatly wrapped. And yet Lily's words still echoed in her heart. God finally sent you to us. Clara sank onto the cot, clasping her hands together. She whispered into the silence, Lord, I thought I was following your lead. Did I mistake my own longing for your will? Please, show me where I am meant to be. A soft knock startled her. Before she could answer, the door creaked open and Lily peeked inside, her curls catching the last of the sunset. Papa said you should eat, Lily announced, slipping through the door with the certainty of a child who never doubted her welcome. She held a small plate cornbread and a slice of salted pork, still warm. Clara's heart squeezed. Why, thank you, Lily. That's very kind. The girl climbed onto the cot beside her without waiting for an invitation. I told Papa you was supposed to come. He don't see it yet, but I know. Clara smiled gently, though her chest tightened. And how do you know such a thing, sweetheart? Lily's little face grew serious. 'Cause I asked God every night. I prayed and prayed for a mama. Papa tries real hard, but he don't smile much no more, and I get lonely. I told God I didn't want just anybody. I wanted the right one, someone kind. And then you came. The simple conviction in the child's tone left Clara speechless. Her throat burned, tears threatening, but she blinked them back. Lily, she reached out, tucking a stray curl behind the girl's ear. I don't know why I ended up here instead of where I was expected. But I do know God listens to prayers. Always. Even when the answer looks different than we imagine. Lily nodded eagerly, as if Clara had confirmed her faith instead of questioning it. See? You're the answer. God don't make mistakes. Clara let out a trembling laugh. If only she could believe with such certainty. Just then, the door swung open wider. Daniel filled the frame, his tall figure blocking what little light remained. His gaze landed on Lily perched happily beside Clara, and his jaw tightened. Lily, he said sternly, you were told to let Miss Jennings rest. But Papa, no buts. Say goodnight and head inside. The little girl's shoulders slumped, but she leaned close and whispered once more to Clara, Don't be sad. You'll see. God sent you. Then she hopped off the cot and skipped past her father, who ruffled her hair despite his scowl. Daniel lingered in the doorway, arms crossed. I don't know what notion she's putting in your head, but Lily's had her fill of disappointment. I'll not see her heart broken by false hopes. Clara lifted her chin, dignity returning. I would never seek to mislead her, Mr. Reed, but children see things we adults often miss. Perhaps her faith is stronger than ours. For a moment, their eyes locked. Something unspoken flickered in Daniel's gaze, pain perhaps, or longing, but then the shutters closed again. Get some rest, he said curtly. I'll take you to town at first light. He turned and walked away, boots crunching against the dirt. Clara sank back onto the cot, clutching the plate of food she hadn't touched. Her heart was torn in two directions, one voice telling her to accept her mistake and leave quietly, another whispering that maybe, just maybe, Lily was right. She bowed her head again, murmuring into the stillness, Lord, if this is your plan, give me courage, and if it isn't, help me let go. But deep down, beneath the ache and the doubt, a small flame flickered, the kind that no amount of reason could extinguish. Morning sunlight spilled across the valley, painting the hills in shades of gold. Clara stood outside the bunkhouse, carpet-bagged. In hand, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. The stage into town wouldn't leave for another 2 days, but Daniel had insisted he'd ride her in and arrange a room at the boarding house until she could continue on to her rightful groom. Her rightful groom. The thought twisted like a stone in her chest. Somewhere, another man, Mr. Harris of Willow Creek Ranch, if she remembered the letter correctly, was expecting her arrival. A respectable widower who had asked the agency for a bride. That was where she was supposed to be. Not here, not lingering under the gaze of a man who had never asked for her, yet whose little girl clung to her as though she'd been dreamed into existence. Daniel emerged from the barn, leading his horse. He carried himself with the steady, unshakable rhythm of a man who had long ago buried tenderness beneath duty. His hat shaded his face, but his eyes found her, sharp and unreadable. "Ready?" he asked. Clara swallowed, her fingers tightening around her bag. "If it's no trouble." Before he could answer, a small whirlwind of curls came flying from the porch. Lily skidded to a stop right in front of Clara, arms flung wide. "You can't go yet," she cried. Daniel frowned. "Lily, no." The child stamped her foot, tears already brimming. "Papa, you promised you'd listen when I prayed. And I prayed for her. God sent her, and you're trying to send her away." Clara's heart ached at the child's fierce plea. She crouched down, setting her bag aside to hold Lily's trembling hands. "Sweetheart, your papa's just trying to take care of you, the best he knows how. I don't belong here. I was meant for another place." Lily shook her head violently, curls bouncing. "No, you were meant for us." Daniel's jaw clenched. He reached down, lifting his daughter into his arms. "That's enough, Lily." His voice was firm but quiet, as though speaking too harshly might shatter her. "Miss Jennings has her own life to live." The girl buried her face against his shoulder, sobbing. Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line, and for the briefest moment, Clara saw a crack in his armor. Pain, helplessness, perhaps even longing. Clara forced herself to look away, her throat tight. She knew the sensible choice: get on that horse, ride to town, find her proper place. It was what duty required. Yet something inside her rebelled. Something deep and stubborn whispered that leaving this ranch, this child, and even this man would be a mistake she'd regret all her life. "Mr. Reed," she said softly, her voice steadier than she felt, Perhaps I should remain here until the next stage arrives. Only a few days. It will give me time to rest and Lily time to understand that I must go." Daniel hesitated, suspicion flickering in his eyes. He glanced at Lily, then back at Clara. His silence stretched long enough that Clara's pulse quickened. Finally he exhaled, slow and reluctant. "Fine, a few days, but only for Lily's sake. Don't put any ideas in her head." Clara nodded, though her heart was already betraying her. The days that followed became a strange dance of restraint and belonging. Clara cooked simple meals in the bunkhouse, but more often than not she found herself in the kitchen with Lily, baking bread or stirring stew. The girls' laughter filled the air like sunlight, and Clara discovered she enjoyed the work far more than she had imagined. She helped mend shirts for the ranch hands, her stitches neat and careful. She even braved the corral, where Daniel trained a spirited young colt. The men exchanged looks of approval, surprised by her willingness to pitch in. Daniel, however, remained guarded. He spoke little, watching her with eyes that measured everything. And yet Clara noticed the way his gaze lingered when she bent to comfort Lily, or when she brushed a wisp of hair from her cheek while rolling dough. He tried to hide it, but she felt it, an awareness neither of them dared acknowledge. Each evening, when the stars rose and silence fell over the ranch, Clara wrestled in prayer. "Lord, am I meant to leave? Or have you placed me here for a reason beyond my understanding?" But no answer came, only the echo of Lily's voice, fierce and unwavering. "God finally sent you to us." Daniel Reed had weathered droughts, blizzards, and stampedes. He'd faced nights of hunger, days of back-breaking labor, and the endless ache of loss. All of it he'd endured with grit and silence. But nothing unnerved him quite like the sight of Clara Jennings moving about his ranch as if she'd always belonged there. She was supposed to be a temporary guest. a woman to occupy Lily's imagination for a short spell before the stage carried her away. And yet, each day Clara wove herself more tightly into the rhythm of their lives. Daniel told himself he didn't like it. The first test came at dawn, when one of the ranch hands reported a fence down on the north pasture. Daniel saddled his horse, ready to tackle the job alone. But Clara appeared, skirts tucked neatly, a basket of tools balanced in her arms. "I've mended worse," she said with quiet determination. "You'll slow me down," Daniel muttered, reaching to take the basket from her. "I'll keep up." Her chin lifted in a way that reminded him sharply of his late wife, stubborn, unyielding. He relented, against his better judgment. To his surprise, she worked steadily, holding rails in place as he hammered, her hands blistering but never faltering. By the time the last post was secured, sweat darkened her dress and strands of hair clung to her flushed cheeks. But her smile, tired, triumphant, stirred something inside him he hadn't felt in years. He tamped it down quickly. The second test came in the kitchen. Daniel had long since grown used to meals that were filling but plain. Clara, however, brought new life to their table. Within days, the bunkhouse stove turned out fresh bread, pies sweetened with wild berries, and stews so savory even the ranch hands paused their work to comment. "You're spoiling them," Daniel grumbled, watching as the men laughed and ate with uncharacteristic cheer. Clara only smiled, ladling stew into Lily's bowl. "Hard work deserves good food. It keeps a man's spirit strong." Her words were simple, but the way she said them, gentle, firm, made Daniel wonder when he'd last thought about more than mere survival. The third test came one afternoon when Lily went missing. Panic clawed at Daniel's chest as he and the ranch hands scoured the property. He found her finally, crouched near the riverbank, clutching a wildflower crown. Before he could unleash the fear-driven scolding burning his tongue, Clara knelt beside Lily, her voice calm but firm. "Darling, you frightened us. Do you see how dangerous it is to wander off alone?" Lily's lip trembled. Daniel braced for tears, but Clara's hand smoothed the girl's curls, her tone steady. "I know you meant no harm, but you must honor your papa's rules. God gives us parents to keep us safe." Instead of tears, Lily nodded solemnly. "Yes, ma'am." Daniel stood frozen, awe prickling at the edges of his irritation. He had shouted himself hoarse many times trying to keep his daughter safe. Yet Clara had accomplished more with a few calm words than he had in 3 years of stern warnings. That night, after Lily had been tucked in, Daniel found Clara outside, rinsing laundry in a tin basin beneath the starlight. He meant to thank her, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he leaned against the post, arms crossed. "You don't have to do all this," he said gruffly. She looked up, moonlight softening her features. "Do what?" "Cook, mend, chastise my daughter better than I can." The edge in his tone betrayed more vulnerability than he liked. Clara wrung out a shirt, her movements deliberate. "I'm not trying to take anyone's place, Mr. Reed. I'm only doing what I know how to do. It seems right to help where I can." He stared at her, the fight draining from him. For a heartbeat, he almost admitted how much he needed her presence, how the house felt less hollow, how Lily's laughter had grown brighter, how even his own heart stirred when Clara smiled. But fear slammed the door shut again. He pushed off the post and tipped his hat low. "Don't get too comfortable. You'll be leaving soon." Clara met his retreating figure with a steady gaze. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. But as the night wind carried the faint sound of Lily's laughter drifting from the house, Daniel couldn't shake the gnawing realization every day Clara remained. She was proving herself indispensable, and that terrified him more than anything. Ranch had always been a place of silence for Daniel. Long days filled with the creak of saddles, the lowing of cattle, the hammer of hooves, and then nights hollow with loneliness. Since his wife's passing, he had kept the silence close, like a shield. But with Clara in the house, silence no longer ruled. It shifted, softened. It wasn't that she filled the air with chatter. No, Clara's presence was quieter than that. She hummed when she cooked, soft melodies that reminded Daniel of church hymns his mother once sang. She laughed gently with Lily, a sound light enough to lift the weight from a room. And when she spoke to him, her voice carried a patience that disarmed rather than pressed. Daniel didn't want to admit it, but the ranch was different now. Alive. One evening, as dusk painted the sky in streaks of lavender, Daniel found Clara on the porch swing with Lily curled against her side. The child's eyes drooped, her small hand clutching Clara's sleeve as Clara read softly from a worn book of Bible stories. And the Lord said, "I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." The words fell into the twilight, gentle but sure. Daniel froze in the doorway, the verse piercing through walls he had carefully built. Hope, a future. Things he hadn't dared believe in since the day the fever took his wife. Clara glanced up, catching him there. Their eyes met across the dim porch. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then Lily stirred, whispering sleepily, "Don't stop, Mama." The word hung in the air like a fragile glass bell. Clara's cheeks flushed, but she only smoothed Lily's curls and kept reading. Daniel's chest tightened. He turned away quickly, retreating into the dark house, but the echo of that word, Mama, followed him long into the night. The next morning, Daniel saddled his horse before sunrise, restless. He told himself the work in the far pasture couldn't wait, but truth pressed harder. He was running from the growing pull of Clara's presence. By midday, though, when he rode back, he found her again, not idle in the bunkhouse as he half expected, but kneeling in the dirt beside a newborn calf. The mother cow hovered anxiously, but Clara spoke to the animal in soothing tones as she rubbed the calf's trembling sides with a strip of burlap. Daniel dismounted in a hurry. "What in blazes are you doing?" Clara glanced up, cheeks streaked with dirt, but her eyes shone. She was struggling to breathe. "I just thought warmth might help." He crouched, checking the calf himself. To his surprise, it was stronger than he'd feared, breathing steady, legs kicking feebly. He looked at Clara, unable to hide his astonishment. "You've a knack for this." Her smile was modest, though a hint of pride sparked in her eyes. "I grew up near farms. My father taught me enough to lend a hand when needed." Daniel swallowed hard. She wasn't supposed to fit here. Yet everything about her did. Days slipped into weeks, and Daniel noticed changes he could no longer deny. Lily's laughter rang through the house again, chasing away shadows. Clara's touch had mended not just clothing, but something inside his daughter, something fragile and tender. And Daniel himself. He found the ache in his chest loosening. He caught himself looking forward to meals, to evenings on the porch, to the cadence of Clara's voice. Sometimes, when she brushed a wisp of hair from her cheek, or when she bent to listen patiently to Lily's endless questions, he felt warmth stir deep within warmth he had thought long dead. But each time it rose, he crushed it down. "Don't be a fool," he told himself. "She's not yours. She's not meant for you." Still, at night, when the ranch grew quiet and stars stretched across the sky, he remembered the sound of Clara's laughter, the tenderness in her eyes, and the simple truth he could not escape. Healing had slipped in through the cracks, and no matter how hard he tried, Daniel Reed could not stop it. The nights grew cooler as autumn crept into the valley. Daniel often found himself lingering at the barn long after chores were finished, staring into the dark as though the silence could steady the unrest inside him. But lately, even the silence wasn't enough. He could still hear Clara's laughter echoing in the kitchen, still see Lily tucked beneath her arm, eyes shining with the kind of joy he hadn't seen in years. He could still remember the way Clara's voice softened when she read from Scripture, as if she believed every word down to her bones. And then there were Lily's prayers. One night, on his way past her room, Daniel stopped short at the sound of her small voice. The door was cracked, and through it he saw Clara kneeling beside the bed, her head bowed while Lily prayed aloud. "Dear God," the little girl whispered, "thank you for sending Miss Clara. Please let her stay forever. Papa's heart is lonely, and mine too. But now we're not lonely no more. Amen." Daniel's throat tightened. He pressed a hand to the doorframe to steady himself. Clara lifted her head then, her expression tender as she kissed Lily's curls. She didn't correct her. She didn't explain that she wasn't staying. She only whispered, "Amen," as though she too believed. Daniel stepped back into the hallway, his chest heavy. He wanted to storm in and tell Lily not to hope for what couldn't be. He wanted to remind Clara that she wasn't bound to them, that she had another man waiting. But the words died before they reached his lips. Instead, he walked out into the cold night, staring at the stars until the sting in his eyes faded. The next morning, Clara found him by the corral, repairing a gate. She carried a pail of water for the men, her sleeves rolled up, the morning sun glinting off the loose strands of her hair. "You work too hard," she said gently, setting the pail down. Daniel didn't look at her. "Work keeps things running. Work isn't all a man needs." Her words struck too close. He shoved the gate hinge harder than necessary, the metal groaning. "Don't presume to know what I need, Miss Jennings." There was a pause. He braced for her to retreat, but instead she spoke softly, with that calm strength of hers. "I wasn't talking about you only. Lily needs more than chores and order. She needs laughter. She needs tenderness, and so do you." Daniel turned then, his gaze sharp, but Clara didn't flinch. Her eyes held his steadily, as though she saw right through him. For a moment, the space between them burned with words neither dared speak. Finally, he broke away, his voice gruff. "You'll be on the stage soon. Don't go planting notions that can't take root." Her lips parted, but she said nothing more. She only lifted the pail and walked back toward the house, leaving Daniel to wrestle with the gnawing truth. Part of him wanted those notions to take root, no matter how foolish. That evening, Lily tugged Clara outside to show her the swing beneath the cottonwood tree. Daniel lingered in the shadows, pretending to check the fence line, but his eyes kept straying to the scene. Lily swung high, squealing with delight while Clara steadied the ropes. "Higher, Mama, higher!" she cried out the word again. That sacred, dangerous word. Daniel's chest clenched, but before he could step forward, Clara slowed the swing, kneeling to Lily's level. "Sweetheart, I'm not your mama," she said gently. "Yes, you are," Lily insisted. "Not the one who left, the one God sent." Daniel gripped the fence rail so hard his knuckles whitened. He wanted to shout, to stop this before it went too far, but he couldn't move. He couldn't look away. Clara's face softened, her eyes glistening. She brushed a curl from Lily's cheek. "I love you dearly, Lily, more than I can say. And I'm grateful God lets me be here, even if it's only for a while." Lily hugged her fiercely, satisfied with the answer. But Daniel heard what Clara hadn't said, what she couldn't say. That her time here was temporary. That one day soon she would walk away. And for the first time, Daniel admitted the truth he had been running from. The thought of her leaving felt unbearable. He lifted his eyes to the heavens, where stars had just begun to prick the sky. Lily believed God had sent Clara. Clara herself seemed unsure, but Daniel? He didn't know what to believe anymore. The day of the stagecoach's arrival dawned crisp and gray, the sky heavy with low clouds. Clara woke before sunrise, her chest aching with the weight of what lay ahead. Her carpetbag was packed again. This time, not just in preparation, but with finality. She lingered over the small details, folding her shawl, smoothing her dress, whispering a prayer with every movement. Lord, give me strength to go where I'm meant to go, even if it breaks my heart. From the window she saw Daniel already saddling his horse, jaw set, movements clipped. He had avoided her the past few days, keeping his words short, his distance firm. She told herself it was easier this way. If he was cold, leaving would sting less. But deep inside, she knew the truth. His distance was a wall he built to keep himself from crumbling. And then there was Lily. The little girl clung to Clara's hand at breakfast, refusing to eat more than a few bites. Her blue eyes brimmed with tears. She tried so hard to blink away. Clara brushed her curls, tying them with a ribbon she had brought from the east, her own throat tightening with each stroke. "You'll be good for your papa," Clara whispered, kissing the girl's cheek. "I'll try," Lily said, voice trembling, "but it won't be the same without you." Clara forced a smile she didn't feel. "God will still be with you, and he'll give your papa all the strength he needs." Lily shook her head stubbornly. "No, God sent you. He won't take you away." The words cut deeper than any blade. Clara hugged her tightly, then rose quickly before she lost her composure altogether. By mid-morning, the distant rumble of wheels and the crack of a whip echoed through the valley. The stagecoach. Daniel stood tall by the gate, arms folded, his face carved from stone. Clara walked beside him, her bag in hand, Lily's fingers laced desperately through hers. The driver tipped his hat. "Miss Jennings, this is your ride to Willow Creek." The name struck Clara like a jolt. Willow Creek, the place she was meant to be, the man she was meant to wed. Duty tugged at her feet, but her heart felt rooted in the soil of this ranch. She turned to Daniel, searching his face. If he wanted her to stay, if he said even one word, she would drop the bag, forget the contract, and remain. But he said nothing. His jaw tightened, his eyes unreadable. "Go on," he said quietly. "Best not keep them waiting." Her breath caught. She nodded, swallowing back the ache, and crouched to hug Lily one last time. "Be brave, sweetheart. Remember, God always listens." The girl clung to her fiercely, but he already answered, "Don't go, Mama, please." Clara's vision blurred. She pried herself away, placed her bag on the coach, and climbed aboard. The door shut with a heavy thud. Through the window, she saw Lily sobbing into Daniel's chest, his large hands holding her tightly, though his own eyes glistened. Clara pressed a hand to the glass, torn in two. The driver cracked the whip. The horses surged forward. The wheels jolted over the rutted road, carrying Clara farther from the ranch. Dust billowed, swallowing the image of Daniel and Lily until they vanished from sight. Clara sank back into the seat, trembling. "This is right," she whispered. "This is where I was meant to go." But the words rang hollow. Every mile pulled her farther from the place where her heart already belonged. She pictured Lily's tear-streaked face, Daniel's stoic silence, and the whisper that had haunted her since that first day. "God finally sent you to us." Clara closed her eyes, pressing her hands together. "Lord, if I'm wrong, stop me. Please, show me where you want me to be." The coach rattled on, but Clara felt as though the road itself was leading her away from more than just a ranch. It was carrying her from her purpose. And back at the gate, Daniel Reed stood in silence long after the coach disappeared, his arms wrapped around his weeping daughter, his heart breaking with the words he hadn't dared to say. The stagecoach rattled down the dirt road, its wheels grinding against the ruts. Clara sat stiffly, hands clenched in her lap, her carpetbag at her feet. Each jolt carried her farther from the ranch, farther from Lily's laughter, farther from the quiet strength she had found in Daniel's presence. She told herself she was being dutiful, fulfilling the promise she'd made to the agency, to the man who awaited her in Willow Creek. It was the sensible thing, the right thing. And yet her heart throbbed with every mile, as if a string bound her to that ranch and stretched tighter with each turn of the wheel. Behind her, Daniel Reed stood frozen at the gate, watching the dust cloud drift down the valley until it blurred into the horizon. His arms tightened around Lily, who sobbed so hard her small body shook. "She's gone." Lily choked. Daniel swallowed, his throat raw. He wanted to tell her it was for the best, that life would return to the way it had been. Simple, predictable, safe, but the lie stuck fast. Because already the silence felt unbearable. Already the ranch seemed emptier than before Clara had come. Lily pulled back suddenly, her tear-streaked face blazing with determination. She wriggled free from Daniel's arms and bolted down the road, her curls bouncing. "Lily!" Daniel shouted, fear jolting through him as he sprinted after her. The child ran with everything she had, her voice shrill against the open sky. "Don't go, Mama. Don't go. God sent you to us." The stagecoach lurched forward, but the driver reined the horses in sharply, startled by the sight of a little girl running straight into the road. The vehicle shuddered to a halt, dust swirling. Clara's heart seized. She pressed her hands to the glass, then wrenched the door open, leaping down before the coach had fully stopped. She dropped to her knees in the road and caught Lily in her arms, holding the sobbing child close. "Oh, sweetheart," Clara whispered, tears streaking her own cheeks. "I didn't want to leave. I thought I had to." Lily clung to her, hiccuping between sobs. "Papa needs you. I need you. Please don't go." Daniel arrived then, breath ragged from the run. He froze at the sight before him, his daughter, wrapped tight around Clara, Clara's face buried in Lily's curls. The scene pierced him deeper than any wound ever had. For too long, he had let fear chain him, fear of loss, fear of loving again only to have it ripped away. But here was his daughter begging, and here was Clara, who had already stitched herself into the fabric of their lives with gentleness and faith. Daniel dropped to one knee in the dirt, his voice hoarse. "Clara." She lifted her gaze, her eyes glistening with tears. "You were never supposed to come here," he said, his words trembling. "But maybe that was God's plan all along. I told myself I couldn't risk loving again, that it was safer to live with my walls. But you," his voice broke and he drew a steadying breath, "you've brought life back into this place, into Lily, into me. And I can't let you right away without telling you. I don't want you to go." Clara's breath caught. The confession hung in the air, raw and unguarded. "Are you sure?" she whispered, "because I cannot be a temporary comfort. If I stay, it's as wife, as mother, as partner in all things. Nothing less." Daniel reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek with a tenderness that startled even him. "I wouldn't ask for less, Clara. Stay with us." Lily pressed her hands together in a fervent little prayer. "See, Papa?" God answered. Clara's laughter broke through her tears, shaky and bright. She turned to the stagecoach driver, who sat watching wide-eyed. "I won't be needing that ride after all." The man tipped his hat and urged the horses forward, leaving dust and silence in his wake. But this time, the silence was not empty. It was filled with promise. Daniel gathered Clara and Lily into his arms, holding them as though letting go would never again be an option. For the first time in years, hope took root in his heart, steady and sure. The dust from the departing stagecoach had barely settled when Daniel, Clara, and Lily stood together in the road, holding on to one another as if time itself might pry them apart. For the first time in years, Daniel didn't feel the weight of loneliness pressing down on his shoulders. Instead, he felt the warmth of two hearts beside his, beating in rhythm with his own. They walked back to the ranch slowly, Clara's hand in his, Lily skipping between them with renewed joy. When they reached the porch, Clara paused, her eyes traveling over the house, the barns, the fields rolling beyond. She drew a breath as though memorizing it all. "This place already feels like home," she whispered. Daniel's chest tightened. "It is, if you'll have it and us." Her gaze met his, steady and sure. "I will." The days that followed bloomed with change. Clara unpacked her bag not as a visitor, but as a woman who belonged. She filled the house with warmth curtains. Stitched by her hand, the scent of bread rising in the kitchen, hymns hummed softly as she worked. Lily shadowed her at every turn, beaming brighter with each passing day. Daniel watched it all with a quiet awe. He had feared that opening his heart again would dishonor the memory of his late wife, but Clara never tried to erase the past. Instead, she honored it, speaking gently of the woman who came before, praying with Lily for the mother she had lost, and weaving herself into their lives without forcing anything away. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the sky in gold, Daniel found Clara sitting on the porch swing, Lily asleep against her side. The gentle sway, the hush of crickets, and the glow of lamplight spilling from the window made the scene almost holy. "You fit here," Daniel said quietly, stepping closer. Clara smiled faintly, brushing a curl from Lily's forehead. "I keep thinking about the mistake that brought me. How I was meant for another ranch, another man." She looked up at him then, her eyes shining. "But I don't believe it was a mistake at all." Daniel sat beside her, the boards creaking under his weight. He took her hand in his, rough and calloused against her soft fingers. "I've spent years building fences to keep the herd out. But you stepped right through without asking permission. And I'm glad you did." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, her voice a whisper. "Maybe we both needed reminding that God's plans are bigger than our own." Daniel kissed the crown of her hair, his heart at peace in a way he hadn't thought possible. Weeks later, the town preacher stood in the small white chapel, sunlight streaming through the windows as Clara walked down the aisle in a simple but lovely gown. Lily scattered wildflowers before her, grinning from ear to ear. Daniel waited at the altar, nerves twisting in his stomach. But the moment Clara's eyes met his, the storm inside him stilled. She wasn't just a woman he loved, she was the answer to a prayer he hadn't dared to voice. When the vows were spoken, Clara's voice trembled but never wavered. "I promise to walk beside you, Daniel, in sorrow and in joy, in labor and in rest. And I promise to love Lily as my own, for she is God's precious gift." Lily slipped her small hand into Clara's, beaming through happy tears. Daniel's voice was low but firm when his turn came. "I promise to protect you, honor you, and love you all my days." "You are the miracle I never expected," the preacher smiled. "What God has joined together, let no one separate." And when Daniel kissed Clara, it felt less like a beginning and more like a completion, as though every twist of fate, every heartache had led to this very moment. Life on the ranch was not without hardship. Cattle still strayed, storms still threatened the fields, and work never ceased. But now there was laughter in the house, prayer before every meal, and love in every corner. At night, when Lily knelt beside her bed, she no longer prayed for God to send someone. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for sending Mama." And Daniel, standing in the doorway with Clara's hand in his, would bow his head with tears in his eyes. Because for the first time, he believed it fully. Clara hadn't been sent to the wrong ranch at all. She had been sent exactly where she was. Meant to be. God's perfect plan had led her home.